What if I told you that the greatest story of rebellion wasn't fought on the battlefields of men, but in the luminous heart of creation itself? When we speak of ultimate evil, of a cruelty so profound it defies comprehension, one name invariably echoes in the corridors of the mind: Satan. But the story of the fall from grace is far vaster, far more terrifying than a single adversary. Names like Lucifer, Beelzebub, Azazel, and Samyaza whisper through the ages, each conjuring a unique chill, a distinct dread that runs like ice down the spine. They are the architects of shadow, the titans who renounce the light and embrace the endless consuming dark. They were heaven's own, standing as firm, favored enemies of the void, only to become symbols of cosmic insurrection. What most people don't realize is that Satan was not a lone dissenter. His was not a solitary act of defiance. He was merely the first spark in a celestial inferno, the catalyst for a schism that saw a third of heaven's hosts turn their backs on the supreme creator. This implies a legion of darkness, a hierarchy of the fallen, whose very names carry the weight of cosmic treason and absolute terror. Today, we journey into that abyss. We will uncover the stories of 4 of the most powerful and consequential angels mentioned in sacred and apocryphal texts. These are beings forged by the hand of God himself, who once stood in his radiant presence, only to betray their creator and unleash a war that shook the foundations of heaven, ending in their cataclysmic overthrow and eternal exile. Who were they? What were their individual stories of descent? The answers lie buried in texts both famous and forbidden, and the truth is more shocking than you can imagine. We promise you the final revelation of their ultimate fate will change the way you see the eternal struggle between good and evil. Before we descend into the heart of this ancient darkness, do us a favor. Pause for a moment and look around you. Let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's fascinating for us to see how far these stories echo. Now, take a deep breath. Our exploration into the secret history of the lost angels begins. First, we must speak of the one whose name once meant light itself: Lucifer, the morning star. Imagine an angel of such brilliance, such magnificent and breathtaking beauty, that he was considered the masterpiece of all God's celestial creations. Forged with boundless power and an intelligence that knew no peer, Lucifer was the epitome of divine artistry. He once stood beside the celestial throne, a radiant figure holding a position of honor and authority that no other could contest. He was perfect in his ways from the day he was created. But perfection, when coupled with the fire of free will, can become a crucible for the most dangerous of sins: pride. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, a corruption began to bloom within his heart. The perfection that defined him curdled into arrogance. Lucifer, the light-bearer, grew dissatisfied with his role as a servant, even to the God of all power. A new, terrible desire ignited within him, a desire for the throne itself, a longing for absolute dominion over all of creation, to be a power above even the supreme being. He made the fateful, audacious declaration, fueled by a mad ambition: "I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the Mount of Assembly, on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." This proclamation was not merely a thought. It was the first tremor of a cosmic earthquake, the genesis of his heart's collapse. Greed and hubris metastasized, compelling Lucifer to orchestrate a rebellion of unprecedented scale. He used his charisma, his power, and his piercing intellect to sow seeds of doubt and ambition among the other angels, eventually persuading a full third of the heavenly host to join his treacherous cause. And so the heavens shattered. A war between light and shadow, loyalty and treason, erupted across the celestial plains, its violence shaking the very fabric of the universe. The conflict was cataclysmic, a storm of divine energies and clashing wills. Yet for all his might, Lucifer's power was ultimately no match for the righteous fury of the archangel Michael. Leading God's loyal army, Michael confronted Lucifer in a battle that would decide the fate of creation. The forces of heaven, fueled by unwavering faith, defeated Lucifer and his rebellious legion, casting them out of the celestial kingdom. They fell like lightning from heaven, plummeting from the realms of eternal light into a newly formed abyss of shadow and fire. No longer the bringer of light, Lucifer was transformed. He became Satan, the adversary, the great enemy of God and humanity. He is the deceiver, the tempter, and the destroyer. Exiled from heaven, he now roams the earth, a wraith of his former glory, hiding in the shadows of human hearts. His eternal mission became to entice mankind, to lure souls into the same trap of sin and pride that led to his own downfall. The radiant image of the morning star was forever extinguished, replaced by the eternal symbol of betrayal, darkness, and a destructive rage that makes all who hear his name tremble in fear. His story is a chilling epic of how the brightest light can cast the darkest shadow. But the story of the fall does not end with him. We must now turn our gaze to a different, and in some ways, more insidious form of corruption. We speak of Samyaza, the leader of the Watchers. Samyaza was a high-ranking angel, a chief among a special order sent to earth with a noble purpose. His very name is believed to mean "he who sees God," or "the name has seen," indicating a being of immense wisdom and divine insight. He was a leader of the Grigori, or the Watchers, a group of 200 angels dispatched to the terrestrial plane to watch over, guide, and instruct early humanity in the ways of righteousness. But as they descended and walked among mortals, a fatal vulnerability was exposed. Samyaza and his fellow Watchers became utterly captivated, then corrupted, by the profound beauty of human women. The daughters of men, in their mortal fragility and grace, sparked a desire in these celestial beings that overwhelmed their sacred duty. The mission to guide humanity was abandoned in favor of a desire to possess it. The apocryphal Book of Enoch, a non-canonical but profoundly influential text, chronicles this tragic fall in vivid detail. It states, "And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men and beget us children." Samyaza, as their leader, was initially filled with dread. He feared he alone would bear the ultimate responsibility for this great sin. He voiced his hesitation, but the other angels, consumed by their lust, refused to be swayed. They bound themselves together with a solemn oath upon Mount Hermon, a pact of mutual imprecation, ensuring that none would back down from their shared plan. And so the 200 Watchers, led by Samyaza, descended. They took human wives, betraying their divine mission and sealing their fate. In their union with mortal women, they did more than just break a celestial law. They unleashed forbidden knowledge upon the world. They taught humanity the secret arts of heaven, astrology, the interpretation of signs, sorcery, and the crafting of enchantments. While some of this knowledge might have seemed beneficial, it came without the context of divine wisdom or moral restraint. It opened a Pandora's box of human ambition and vice. The offspring of these unholy unions were a race of monstrous beings known as the Nephilim. These were not merely half-angelic heroes. They were bloodthirsty giants who towered over men. Their appetites were insatiable. They devoured all the acquisitions of men, and when humanity could no longer sustain them, they turned upon mankind itself, consuming flesh and blood. They ravaged the earth, destroying everything in their path, filling the world with violence, chaos, and despair. Witnessing this profound degradation and hearing the desperate cries of both the earth and its human inhabitants, God's anger was kindled. He resolved to cleanse the world of this corruption, to wash away the stain of the watchers' sin with a great and terrible flood, the deluge. He warned the one righteous man, Noah, to build an ark so that a pure lineage could survive and repopulate the world. As for Samyaza and his rebellious watchers, their judgment was swift and severe. The Lord commanded his archangels to act. They were captured, bound hand and foot, and cast into the deepest, darkest pits of the earth. There, in the suffocating blackness of the abyss, they were condemned to suffer imprisonment and torment until the great day of judgment, when they would face their final, fiery end. The tale of Samyaza is a harrowing warning about the power of lust to corrupt even the most sacred duty, and the terrible, inescapable punishment reserved for those who dare to defy the will of the Most High. The Lord decreed that the archangel Raphael should bind Samyaza's hands and feet, cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, in a place called Dudale, and imprison him there. He was to be covered with jagged and sharp rocks, enveloped in an eternal night, so that he may never again see the light. On the day of the great judgment, he will be cast into the consuming fire. Raphael obeyed, and the earth began to heal from the corruption the fallen watchers had wrought. The Lord declared that he would not destroy all of humanity, but would preserve a righteous line through the great flood. This punishment served as a prelude to the final judgment, when all would be decided. Then the Lord gave a new mission to the archangel Michael. He was commanded to announce to Samyaza and his cohort the impending doom of their hybrid children, the cruel Nephilim. They would be made to witness the slaughter of their own offspring, to see them destroy one another in a bloody civil war. They would watch the death of their loved ones, and then they themselves would be bound for 70 generations beneath the earth, until the day of the final eternal judgment. The fall of Samyaza and the watchers led to their perpetual torment in the abyss, and their descendants, the Nephilim, were wiped out by the great flood. However, the story doesn't entirely end there. It is believed that the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim were not entirely destroyed. Their souls remained, wandering the earth as malevolent spirits, demons seeking to possess the living, continuing to plague humanity with the evil legacy of their fathers. Samyaza, once a radiant angel of wisdom, became an eternal symbol of intellectual deviance, of sacred knowledge corrupted by insatiable earthly desire. Within this same cabal of fallen watchers, there was another, perhaps even more dangerous figure, Azazel. His name is often translated as God strengthens or the scapegoat, and he stands as a paragon of corruption and a master of forbidden arts. Azazel was one of the most powerful and formidable warriors in heaven, a chief among the watchers who, like Samyaza, fell prey to the allure of mortal women and betrayed the sacred mission entrusted to him. But Azazel's sin went far beyond lust. He became the primary teacher of humanity's most destructive capabilities. While Samyaza's sin was primarily one of lust and leadership in rebellion, Azazel's was a sin of active, malicious instruction. He didn't just break the rules, he armed humanity to shatter them. He revealed to men the secrets of metallurgy, how to forge swords, craft knives, make shields and breastplates. He taught them to mine the earth for metals, not for tools of progress, but for instruments of war. He single-handedly introduced organized violence to the human race. His corruption was not limited to men. To the women, he taught the arts of deception and vanity. He showed them how to make cosmetics, how to apply eyeliner to beautify their eyes, how to use tinctures to color their hair, and how to adorn themselves with precious metals and stones. From this instruction, vanity, pride, and egoism began to infiltrate the human soul. A society that was once harmonious quickly descended into chaos. The world was plunged into a maelstrom of warfare, depravity, and lust. The Book of Enoch records his transgressions explicitly, And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. The moral fabric of humanity unraveled. Before these grievous sins which Azazel had unleashed upon the world, God could not remain silent. The cries of the corrupted earth reached heaven, and God gave the archangel Raphael the mission to punish him. The command was terrifying in its specificity. Raphael was to bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into the deepest darkness in the desolate desert of Dudael. He was to be covered with rough and jagged rocks, and there he would remain, blind to the light, until the great day of judgment. On that day he would be thrown into the eternal fire to suffer a pain that would never cease. Azazel is also referenced, albeit more cryptically, in the canonical Bible, specifically in the book of Leviticus. The text describes a sacred ritual for the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. On this holiest of days, the high priest would take 2 goats. One goat would be sacrificed to the Lord as a sin offering. The second goat was designated for Azazel. This goat, known as the scapegoat, would not be killed. Instead, the high priest would lay his hands upon its head, symbolically transferring all the sins, iniquities, and transgressions of the people of Israel onto the animal. Then the goat would be led out into the wilderness and released, carrying the sins of the people away into the desolate lands believed to be ruled by Azazel. While scholars debate whether Azazel in this context refers to a specific entity or simply a remote location, the association is powerful. Many traditions hold that Azazel is indeed the fallen angel, the lord of the desert wastes, a demonic figure who receives the sins of mankind. He became the living embodiment of corruption, the master of demonic spirits who, though he is imprisoned, still exerts his influence through the lingering evils of violence, vanity, and greed. Azazel's fall is a stark and vivid testament to the fact that knowledge without wisdom and power without compassion inevitably leads to ruin and chaos. His story is not just a tale of a fallen angel, it's a profound lesson on the immense responsibility that comes with holding power and knowledge, a responsibility he so catastrophically failed to uphold. This brings us to our 4th and final figure of darkness, a name that drips with connotations of filth and decay: Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. This name is infamous, appearing in the New Testament as a prince among demons, a being of immense dark power. His name is believed to be a deliberate corruption of a more ancient and respected title. In the ancient Canaanite city of Ekron, the Philistines worshipped a deity named Baal-zebul, which meant Lord Prince. He was a significant god in their pantheon. However, in the hands of their Israelite rivals, his name was mockingly twisted into Beelzebub, or Baal-zevuv, which translates to Lord of the Flies. This transformation was a form of theological warfare, turning a revered god into a symbol of pestilence, filth, and all things unclean and corrupting. A prince became a lord of vermin. In the New Testament, Beelzebub is presented not as a minor demon, but as a ruler of the dark realms, sometimes even used synonymously with Satan himself. The most notable mention comes when the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the time, witnessed Jesus casting out demons. Unable to deny the reality of the miracle, they seek to discredit its source. They accuse him, saying, "It is only by Beelzebub, the prince of demons, that this fellow drives out demons." The accusation was deeply insidious. They were not just insulting Jesus, they were claiming his divine power was, in fact, demonic in origin. Jesus' response was a masterpiece of sharp, irrefutable logic that exposed the absurdity of their claim. He replied, "Every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. If Satan drives out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then can his kingdom stand? And if I drive out demons by Beelzebub, by whom do your people drive them out? So then they will be your judges. With these words, he not only masterfully refuted their blasphemous charge, but also asserted that his power came from a source diametrically opposed to theirs, from God. He demonstrated that the kingdom of heaven was at hand, actively warring against the forces of darkness. Beelzebub, therefore, is cemented in this exchange as a symbol of the highest echelons of hell's hierarchy. He is not merely a tempter, but a commander, a being whose power is so great that his name can be invoked to explain away the miracles of God. He represents spiritual pollution, the decay of faith, and the blasphemous pride that seeks to attribute the works of heaven to the machinations of hell. In later demonology and literature, such as John Milton's Paradise Lost, Beelzebub is often depicted as Satan's second in command, a fallen cherub of immense intelligence and cunning, forever plotting against the heavens. And so we have seen the arcs of 4 of heaven's mightiest, now fallen: Lucifer, the embodiment of pride; Samyaza, the symbol of corrupted wisdom through lust; Azazel, the purveyor of destructive knowledge and vanity; and Beelzebub, the prince of spiritual decay and filth. Each was once a brilliant, shining angel standing in the presence of God, but through pride, avarice, ambition, and lust, they orchestrated their own rebellion and were cast down into the infernal depths. Their stories serve as potent and timeless reminders of the dangers inherent in power without discipline, knowledge without wisdom, and ambition without humility. They are cautionary tales written on a cosmic scale, demonstrating that even the most perfect of beings can be destroyed by their own choices. But what is their final, ultimate end? For this, we must turn to the prophetic visions of the Book of Revelation, which describes the culmination of all history, the day of last judgment. The prophecies state that at the end of days, Satan, the great dragon, that ancient serpent who deceived the nations, will be seized and bound in the abyss for 1,000 years. After this millennium of peace, he will be released for a short time. He will once again go out to deceive humanity, gathering a vast army from the 4 corners of the earth, the forces of Gog and Magog, for one final desperate battle against the saints and the beloved city of God. But this final rebellion will be swiftly and utterly crushed. Fire will blaze down from heaven and consume Satan's army, and then the final sentence will be passed. The devil who deceived them, along with the beast and the false prophet, and by extension all the fallen angels like Azazel, Samyaza, and Beelzebub who followed his path, will be thrown into the lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death. There they will be tormented day and night, forever and ever. There is no end to their suffering, no reprieve from the consequences of their ancient choice. That is the prophesied fate of the fallen, and the ultimate, undeniable victory of God and his people. When all evil, deception, and rebellion have been finally and irrevocably destroyed, God will restore order to the universe. He will create a new heaven and a new earth, a realm for the faithful where joy, peace, and light will reign for all eternity. These harrowing stories, therefore, are more than just ancient myths or warnings about the consequences of arrogance. They are also a profound promise, a promise of the ultimate triumph of truth, light, and justice, a promise that no matter how deep the shadows may seem or how powerful the forces of darkness appear, the light will, in the end, be victorious.